Hello, you're very welcome along to the NFL Week 18 Matchbook Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as always by Rob Pizzola, Fabian Sommer, and Drew Dinsick one final time this regular season. Pretty exciting time with playoff implications coming up. Before we get into those games, just want to obviously mention that the world of NFL has been overshadowed by that tragic incident on Monday Night Football. Bills safety Damar Hamlin, in case you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have by now, collapsed after tackling Bengals receiver T. Higgins midway through the first quarter. So he underwent CPR approximately 10 minutes and then was taken to hospital. Bills did release a positive statement earlier today on their Twitter page. If you haven't seen it, we do want to quickly read it out just to share with you guys. So per the physicians caring for Damar Hamlin at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, Damar has shown remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours. While still critically ill, he has demonstrated that he appears to be neurologically intact. His lungs continue to heal and he's making steady progress. So we're grateful for all the love and support we have received. Drew, look, I thought it was important just to read that statement. It's been a tough week for the NFL, and look, at least there's some bit of positive news, but obviously he's still critical.
Yeah, this was the most unique in-game situation that I can remember in all my years watching the NFL. It was a really, really tough watch. Obviously, in the moment, the game felt very insignificant, and all you cared about was the health and safety of the players, in particular Damar Hamlin. And this latest update is amazing. Like, I truly in awe at the ability of medical professionals to to save his life in this situation, considering what was happening, and just very, very, very glad that all of the news has been positive. And the anecdote that was shared recently about him, waking up and writing who won the game is like, gives you chills. Like, to talk about, Hollywood type of story. I'm very, very happy that we are getting a positive outcome out of this, because the other side of the coin was not somewhere we want to be at the end of the season heading into the playoffs. But yeah, it was emotional. And if you are coming to us now to say, well, how does this impact the playoff fabric? It absolutely is going to have a first order impact, certainly on the way the Bills approach the game, I would imagine. This could either be galvanizing and lift them up and kind of propel them to championship, or it can be a distraction. We're going to have to see how it plays out. My guess is this week it's going to be galvanizing, but if they're in a playoff situation where things aren't going right, and they're asking themselves, well, what matters more? Does this matter? Like, those sort of things could impact their ability to make a run here. And just from a math standpoint and a making a fair price standpoint, the expectation I have going forward is that the AFC goes through Kansas City. That's a huge swing in, championship equity from Buffalo to Kansas City. I mean, I think Buffalo, there was probably a lot of bargaining going on. They were probably like, look, we'll give it up if we can get Hamlin, out of this safely. And, so there's not probably going to be a lot of emphasis to try to squeeze in a game just to get the one seed back at this point. I think realistically that game goes no contest. Bengals win the AFC North. Bills with the win against the Patriots this week would probably clinch the 2 seed. And then we move on with playoffs as expected with KC in the 1, assuming they beat the Raiders. So that's the way I've been operating in terms of how I'm filling out my futures portfolio. I think Kansas City, ought to be realistically a meaningful favorite to win the AFC at this point, and the Super Bowl, considering they would be at least 3-point favorite over whoever emerges from that side of the bracket. For the millionth year in a row, Pat Mahomes potentially hosting an AFC championship game in Kansas City.
Yeah, it's always the way. Look, again, our thoughts for the Matchbook NFL podcast team from all of us are with the Hamlin family, his speedy recovery, his Bills teammates, and of course all those Bengals players as well. They can't be forgotten. Suma, you wanted to talk a little bit about playoff scenarios and some of the scheduling of the NFL games this weekend.
Yeah, I wonder. So first of all, I understand that you have to put someone into Sunday Night Football, and Packers at home, very intriguing, especially when it's a game against the Lions, who can both potentially make the playoffs. But on the other side, I wonder why they cannot schedule all the games a little bit more advantageous, so that there are that there are not some scenarios where teams might rest starters depending on what happened like 1 hour before. For example, Ravens Bengals at 1 p.m. And then if the Bengals win, the Chargers will be locked into the 5th seed and basically have nothing to play for. Like, why can we not somehow do this game simultaneously? Packers against the Lions. If the Seahawks win, the Lions are basically out and only have to play for spoiling the Packers. I would assume if there's one coach in the NFL or if there's one team that will still give close to 100%, even if they cannot make the playoffs, it's probably Dan Campbell. But it's still a little bit weird of a situation that the Sunday night football game could be impacted by a game that ends like 1 hour before.
Absolutely. And Rob, you want to touch a little bit on why that actually matters, particularly when it comes to the Lions Packers on Sunday Night Football, because if the implications could be huge, they could already be out of the playoffs with no chance.
Right. So I had posted a tweet earlier in this week saying that I think it's completely unfair that the NFL did this. I understand why they did this. They want the Packers on Sunday Night Football. It's a much bigger draw than the Titans and Jags, for example. However, I think people miss the point. And to me, it's just a thing about fairness. I don't care that the Lions are probably going to go out and try 100% in this game. Like, I believe that what Suma said is right. If the Lions get bounced earlier in the day because the Seahawks win, which isn't a foregone conclusion, by the way, but if it does happen, then they're likely still going to put in a decent effort and try to keep Green Bay out of the playoffs. Divisional rival, that's Dan Campbell in a nutshell. Now, explain to me what happens if on the first drop back of the game, Jared Goff rolls his ankle or something like that, and now you have a quarterback who's locked up for another 2 years at like $25 million going to the sideline, hobbling off the field. Are the Lions just going to throw Jared Goff right back in the game and say, get right out there, Jared, like we need to win this game? No, they're not. They're going to say, well, we're playing for next year. If Aiden Hutchinson goes down on the field, Jeff Okudah, whoever, any of their young players, hip injury, shoulder injury, people get banged up in the NFL, and this happens on a weekly basis where teams just put them right back in the game. This is a different scenario now where the Lions literally have nothing to play for, and there's no reason to risk players for injury. So there is an inherent advantage for the Packers no matter what in this game. And I find that to be, again, completely understand the rationale as to why. I'm a big advocate of fairness. I think it was a really dumb move to flex this game and to not play it at the same time as the Seahawks and Rams.
Yeah, maybe some people might think that that's not a common view, that people say, oh, it doesn't matter. But look, I was only watching Pro Football Talk this morning, and they were just fully on the belief that who cares really, like, if in the interest of fairness, because Lions are going to be more aggressive, which will make them a better team. Like, I don't know, Rob, like they're pretty big and they've got a wide audience. I think it was grossly unfair the way they kind of put that.
Well, I mean, listen, I personally believe that there's an extremely high likelihood, like Suma said, I heard Drew on You Better You Bet this week, that there's Dan Campbell will play to win. That's the type of coach that he is. He's not a guy that I think is going to mail it in for draft equity, move up a couple spots. To me, that's not him. And that's not the Lions organization. But there's stuff outside of Dan Campbell. Like I said, you deal with this on a weekly basis, right? Guys get hit in the head. They go into, the 10th. They get cleared of a concussion. If I'm the head coach of that team and that player is going to be on my roster next year, I'm probably not throwing him right back out into the game, right? Throwing shoulder injury to quarterback where he goes down and he's in pain. How many times do we see that on a weekly basis? Yeah. The quarterback just gets back up and he wants to stay in the game because it's meaningful for the entirety of the season. Now it's no longer meaningful for anything except to keep the Packers out of the playoffs. But I think it's extremely unfair. I'd like to see the Packers in the playoffs, but I think it's extremely unfair.
Yeah, Drew, you want to come in on that and then talk to us a little bit about the Bills-Bengals situation as well?
Yes, I can speak from the other side of the coin as someone who's benefiting from this as a Packers stakeholder. I was more than delighted that they did this. That said, there's a little bit of ball don't lie feel in the air. I think the Rams potentially beating the Seahawks and making this a true play-in would be pretty outstanding. And it's not off the table because the Seahawks certainly, in my opinion, at least aren't 6.5 points better than the Rams. But we'll see how it goes. And I think it's created a good opportunity for us as bettors to come up with innovative ways to capitalize on this. Really, why not bet the Rams, Lions money line parlay, and then if the Rams do take care of business, you have an enormously EV position on a Lions money line, and then the flip side is if this becomes a truly meaningless game, market's going to continue to dump Packers, and this could get out to 6. And if you believe in the Fighting Dan Campbells, you could get a pretty nice EV position on Lions plus the points, in my opinion. So I agree. All Rob's points are correct, but I think it creates some good opportunity for us as bettors.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how it plays out. It's never easy with the NFL and the scheduling. So we're going to cover 5 of the games that have the proper playoff implications. Guys won't necessarily not have a betting view, but we'll hear from all of them very briefly on those games. We'll go into any other bets and then best bets, which have been good. And of course, the guys are refreshed from a bye week and have enjoyed their Christmas. So we're expecting a big week 18 as we head into the playoffs. And look, we'll go to the first game, which is effectively the first playoff game of the year, is Titans at the Jags, and take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. Titans are 3.5 underdogs on the money line. Jags are 1.36. The Titans getting a 6.5 start on the handicap line, and 40.5 is the total. Rob, over to you. This is well, as Suma said, they should have put this in prime time. There was probably a reason that they didn't.
I mean, there's not a lot of how many times have we seen Thursday night football, Titans and Jags, the last 3 years, where we all
many.
just want
too many.
There is not mass market appeal in it. I know it's a win and you're in game, but it just does not have the appeal that it should. Very, very challenging game for me to handicap because of Josh Dobbs, who's a relatively unknown commodity starting at quarterback. The Titans approached the game against the Cowboys very differently than they would have with Malik Willis there. They passed on 59% of their early downs in the first 30 minutes of that game. That would have been the second most pass-heavy game plan of the season for the Tennessee Titans, including their time with Ryan Tannehill. So they're a believer in Dobbs and that he can throw it. The challenge I have with Dobbs in particular, and again, we're dealing with a very, very small sample, but the Cowboys pressured him on 17 dropbacks last week. He went 6 of 17, no touchdowns, an interception, was sacked 2 times, did not look good under pressure. And the Jags do have the third highest in pressure rate in the entire league. They generate a pressure on 37% of dropbacks. So I don't see this as being a game where the Titans are just going to, all of a sudden click on offense. There's always the possibility that they're able to run on the Jags D, but Jacksonville has improved with their run defense as the year has gone on as well. Ultimately, I do think it is a little bit of an expensive price with Jacksonville when you can throw last week's game out the window with everybody that Tennessee was missing. Like, they rested for this game. They kept their players on the sideline. We're hoping to get healthy. The Saturday game helps them a little bit more than it's going to help Jacksonville as well. But really tough for me to get behind the Titans here. I just think the Jags are that much better than them. I make the game 5.5. Didn't bet it. I had some consideration to betting Tennessee. Then I saw the injury report with Treylon Burks and the groin injury, and did not practice due to rest today. Very, very difficult for me to pull the trigger on this game. Small lean Titans, but just too much uncertainty for me to have a strong position.
Yeah, Suma, you're similar lean towards the Titans.
No, I actually lean towards the Jags a little bit. Maybe
reading it wrong. Go on.
Yes, I thought I made a mistake for our notes. I slightly lean towards the Jaguars. The last time these two teams played, the Titans were with our Treylon Burks, Christian Fulton, and Denico Autry. Jacksonville were with Cam Robinson. Those are the injury differences. Treylon Burks is DNP today, but it looks like it's more of a rest day, and he should be all right for Saturday. But however, I still think that the Titans' issues on defense that they had against the Jaguars cannot properly be solved because they just don't have the bodies over the middle of the field. They are down both starting linebackers, and they just don't have the cornerbacks right now and the linebackers to really cloud the middle of the field and go into man coverage with Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. That's where the Jaguars attacked them like all game long. Evan Ingram had his 150-yard game or something, and I just don't know how the Titans are going to solve the problem, even though I would expect that they will have a much better matchup in the trenches without Cam Robinson and with Denico Autry in. But I still think that their defense on the back end, secondary, and linebackers is not good enough to hold on against that Jaguars passing attack. And on the other side, like Rob mentioned, Josh Dobbs is a big unknown. It's really, really hard for me to make a major upgrade from Malik Willis. Yes, Dobbs is likely going to be a better passing quarterback than Malik Willis, but also Willis and Henry, when Willis was playing, the Titans' one game was at their most efficient stretch this year. Like in all games with Ryan Tannehill, the Titans have a bottom 5 rushing attack in terms of efficiency. And in those games with Malik Willis, they were better at running the ball. So that element is a little bit evaporated. And now it becomes a question of whether Joshua Dobbs can consistently move the ball to go toe-to-toe with Tua Lawrence. And I just cannot really see that happening. Jaguars defense is not great at all, but they can get pressure on that offensive line. And I don't think that Dobbs is the guy who can make all those quick decisions and get the ball out accurately within 2.5 seconds. So it seems like a big number, but at -6, I would still rather lean towards the Jags than the Titans.
Okay, and what I was reading the document through is you are leaning towards, or you did take Titans, but the reason is very similar to Randy Mitchell's comment on YouTube here. As a Jags futures backer, I wish Titans were in such an appealing side here. Took some +7 just to cover my stakes in Jags future. Drew, are you Randy Mitchell? Like, you really should write that word for word in the documents.
Me and Randy are riding together on this. The biggest bet, I put a bunch of flyers in for the Jags preseason to win the AFC, to win the Super Bowl, because you looked at the roster, you looked at the change of the coach, and you thought, man, you squint hard enough, this sure looks like last year's Bengals team, where you have a true blue QB1 coming into his second year with a good coach, and they could, why can't they make a run? The AFC South is a joke. And so I had, pretty decent amount of outstanding exposure preseason to the Jags getting into the playoff mix. And then looks like about halfway through the season, 10-20, October 20th, I put a big bet on them to win the AFC South. And I don't remember why. They went and they promptly lost to the Giants and lost to the Broncos the next 2 weeks. So I kind of wrote that one off. But, they righted the ship. They've done exceptionally well down the stretch here. And they handled the Titans very comfortably last time they faced each other. Although I would say the Titans were not in a very advantageous position in that point. And they do have a couple of advantages in this game. Certainly the extra rest is going to help. Certainly the fact that they're run defense should keep the Jags one-dimensional here, I think, is a realistic expectation. So the entire game comes down to what can Trevor Lawrence do with the weapons that he's operating with right now, and he has developed quite a lot of chemistry with these guys. Doug Peterson is pushing all the right buttons offensively. It is very cool to see this Jaguars team emerge. However, that's still a lot of points. This is a must-win for the Jags. It's not a must-cover. And the idea that they're going to be able to score with impunity through the air, it depends on Trevor Lawrence having one of his better games of the season. If he is at all shaky, if he is at all kind of, shows any of these sort of, first ever playoff game sort of feel kind of experiences here, I could see this one coming in well under the opener of 7. 6 is pretty close to my fare, so I don't love taking Titans at 6. But again, you have a little bit more balanced offense coming in for the Titans than the last time these two teams faced, with Dobbs back there, even in the absence of Burks. I think he can at least provide somewhat of a threat in the passing game that, is a little different than what we saw when Malik Willis was behind center. So it's, I think this has a chance to turn into a little bit of a higher scoring affair once we get through the opening stages. 40 is a hair low. I make fair total here 41. And if there are kind of nerves, if there is a little bit of a slow start to this one because, the running attack's not working for the Jags, or, just in general, the Titans, aren't finding offensive success early, I'm probably going to get involved with a live over or a second half over here, just because at some point, I would expect Trevor Lawrence to figure it out, get it going through the air. The secondary and the pass rush do not scare me whatsoever for Tennessee. Really, that's a one-dimensional defense. They're going to stop the run and they're going to give it up through the air. So it's just a matter of if and when Trevor Lawrence settles down and puts his foot on the gas. I think the Jags ultimately get the win. I think this probably goes over, but my only play so far was a small look at Tennessee +7, trying to shoot for a middle.
Okay, not enough there for a pretty split opinion on the panel with that one. That's Titans and Jags. That's the first game this weekend. We'll move on to the last one, which is Sunday Night Football. Lions at the Packers, and take a look at the betting as we have it on Matchbook.com. Packers are current 1.45 favorites. Lions 3.0. Lions getting a 5.5 head start, and the total is 49. Suma, out of the three, you had less of an opinion on this at all, but set up it for the guys because Rob and Drew have a couple of interesting plays you can go about this game.
Yeah, I think that the spread is in a very good range right now at 4.5. I think depending on how Seahawks against Rams ends, we might either see some Lions money or some Packers money, because I think, like Rob has said, even though we expect the Lions to focus 100% on either getting into the playoffs or bringing their A game on national TV and trying to spoil the Packers, there's still this opportunity that they might not let injured or banged up players back onto the football field. So it's hard to price them at 100% right now. I think if they have a chance to make the playoffs, this number should probably not be 4.5, but closer towards 3.5, because they have a very good offense. I mean, the Packers defense since week 8 ranks first in pass DVOA, but they are always playing the pass first. And I think there are going to be opportunities for the Lions to move the ball on the ground. And also in the first game that the Lions won in some very fluky fashion, it was the stretch where they did not have DJ Chark, they did not have Jameson Williams. So this is a different offense right now that can give the Packers defense fits, in my opinion. I think the Lions should have some advantages at the line of scrimmage. They should be able to run the ball and get towards that Packers defense in terms of play action. But I also think that the Packers offense over the second half of the season has been much better. They are like a top 6-ish offense in terms of DVOA. They are much better at running the ball now. With the emergence of Christian Watson, they also have some life in the passing game. I think they should move the ball easily, and I think it's going to be a very good game. I'm a little bit interested in the over, because I see some scoring opportunities for both teams. But on the spread right now, not a strong opinion. I hope this is going to be a very great game, and I hope that the Lions can still play for the playoffs in this one.
Yeah, it's obviously, as Suma mentioned, Drew, it's impossible to talk about this game without talking about the Rams and the Seahawks, and you have an interesting parlay you want to get involved with.
Yeah. The specific, we teased it off the top, the specific, sequence here where a Rams upset gives the Lions more incentive to leave it all on the field, I think will shape the market if the Rams come through for us. So parlaying those two events in a correlated fashion is the name of the game. You can get basically 9-1 parlaying Rams to win and Lions to win here. And that is assuming you're getting somewhere in the plus 200 range for the Lions. My guess would be that if the Rams do pull off the possible you would see that number come down to like plus 140-ish. I think Suma's read is right that the Lions probably close in the plus 3, maybe a juicy 3 for the Packers. But I think 3.5, 3 is where that goes if this becomes a true kind of neutral win in your end game state. The flip side of the coin is the market seems inclined to back the Packers if and when the Lions are eliminated. This could get out to 6, at which point I'm taking the plus money on the Lions. So you have to be a little bit patient and a little bit kind of decide in the moment what you're going to do, make a plan here. I don't think that there is a plus EV bet at all to be made right now, other than putting Lions money line in a parlay with the Rams.
Yeah, and Rob, you do like basically you're going to only bet this game during the Rams Seahawks game. I do laugh that the whole world will be watching this game, whereas all the bettors will be just monitoring the progress, keeping an eye on the Lions. I just absolutely love the thought of that, and I'll be doing exactly the same.
I don't envision any scenario where I'm betting Green Bay in this game. Okay. So now people need to realize in the final week of the year, you're going to see this phenomenon where like it feels just like games are moving at random times. It's obviously not random. So this game, the line in this game will move if the Rams are winning or if the Seahawks are blowing the Rams out. It's not going to wait till, the games are done or whatever. Somebody's going to take a stance or try to jump out and beat the market to the price on this game. And that happens on pretty much every final week over the course of the NFL season since I can remember betting on the NFL. So for me, it's one of two scenarios here. It's okay. I mean, like you watch Seattle live and you basically see what's going on there. And if they get up a bunch and Seattle's leading by a whole bunch, then the Packers are going to take money. For me, in that case, I don't make a bet personally, and I'm going to wait till the absolute last minute and bet the Lions on Sunday Night Football if Seattle show good signs of winning or if they do end up winning the game, because I think there's going to be an extremely inflated price in this game if that's the scenario. The other scenario is the Rams are highly competitive. They're maybe winning later on in the game, and then you're going to have to make a decision of like, do I just bet the Lions now or am I going to risk completely losing this number? So it's very hard to process that. I'm trying to describe like what my brain will be thinking in real time here as I'm watching Seattle and the LA Rams. But I agree with Drew. There's nothing to do on this game now. But I do not imagine any scenario in which I'm holding a Green Bay ticket this weekend.
Yeah, it's a fascinating game. One to keep an eye on regarding the Rams Seahawks game, which obviously probably should be at the same time, but isn't. So we won't lock in a bet there. Just keep an eye on the markets. Perhaps
I guess we can comment. I didn't really mention anything about the matchup. The Lions can run.
With us, yeah,
the Lions can run, and the Green Bay's defense is soft. So the Lions are going to score points in this one, even if it is a meaningless game for them, in my opinion. I think that's in part leading to why you see this enormous total and what is otherwise a really, when games are of significant importance like this, totals tend to get bet to the under because it's like, oh, this is going to be a chess match, not a score for score affair. This looks like a score for score affair because the Green Bay Packers defense is suspect. They are getting by with turnovers, which are not repeatable, and they are in general, a little bit soft, particularly in the run. Going up against a team that likes to do the power, likes to do the win off the line of scrimmage like the Lions do. So, there's plenty of matchup reasons if this were a true neutral game state to look for Lions plus the points here, and we haven't really seen Aaron Rodgers emerge as far as the, kind of taking this offense to the next level. Part of my enthusiasm about betting the Packers, some of it was defensive. Like if I was going to sit and watch Aaron Rodgers get hyped up all playoff season and watch him win playoff games and see him just kind of go on some sort of magical run, I needed to make sure I had some reason to be happy about that. So I bet the Packers. The other reason was I thought that was possible, that he was going to come out of whatever injuries he was dealing with earlier this season and start lighting it up. And he really hasn't. Like this has been much more of a team effort for the Packers getting to this point. I'll be looking for a lot of signs for that to happen because I think if you're really going to sincerely believe that the Packers have a shot to go and run the NFC, that's what we need to see. And if we don't see it, then I'm cooling my jets a lot and continuing to take opportunities to try to hedge out of my position here.
Yeah, it's definitely an uncharacteristic Rodgers Packers playoff run, but interesting nonetheless. Not enough for a bet on that, but there are plenty to come. As I've mentioned in previously. So we'll move on to the third game, which is Browns at Steelers, and take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. Steelers 1.75, the Browns are 2.2, and their Browns are getting a 2.5 point head start, and the 41 is the total. Rob, we'll hand this over to you. I guess you can't really talk about the Browns without talking about Nick Chubb. He's been absolutely sensational this season.
He really has been. Running game's been on point again for Cleveland, as it's typically been the case. Challenge with the Browns offense and the switch to Deshaun Watson is for the most part, he's been terrible until the second half of last week's game against Washington, where finally he showed some glimpses of the quarterback that we think Deshaun Watson was getting it out to Amari Cooper doing some stuff with the yards after catch. I think this is the first game where we can really point this out this week, but historically speaking, and I guess Trendy Rob is going to enter the picture here right now, but historically speaking, these teams that need to win to get in week 18 or week 17 in the past of the NFL regular season have been horrible bets against the spread. And part of the reason why is that there's sort of like an inflated price tag built into the motivation, right? And a lot of people will probably look at this game, the Jets game this week, Rams, Seahawks, and say one team needs to win, the other has nothing to play for. Obviously, I'm going to bet the one team that needs to win. And historically, we've seen the results go the other way. The challenge is, for me, in particular with this game, is I think that the Steelers have just been undervalued for a long time. And anyone who's watched this program or any of the stuff I do knows that probably going on the past 7 or 8 weeks, I've been consistently betting the Steelers. And I think that they're just a good team. And, there's a lot of talk about, they needed a last minute comeback to come back and beat the Raiders on Christmas Eve. They held the Raiders to 200 yards in that game. The Raiders scored on their first drive and they couldn't do anything afterwards. Last week, same thing, last minute comeback. And, I don't like the Steelers if I have to bet them to win by margin, but it's a little bit of a different story when we see smaller spreads. And I think this spread is honestly pretty close to bang on. I'd be very interested in a Cleveland bet if we did get to +3, because then again, you need the Steelers to win by 4 in order for you to lose your Browns bet. And there's not that much separating these two teams. But Pittsburgh's the real deal when TJ Watt is on the field. They're 8-2 with him on the field this year. They've, been fantastic defensively when he's been out there. Kenny Pickett, listen, I mean, the guy's statistical numbers are not great, but there's like almost an intangible element with him where he just doesn't make the big mistake. He can get it done. Not a ton separating these two teams. So nothing for me here. I'll keep an eye on the market. If we do see a bounce back to 3, I'll be interested in getting involved in the Browns. But other than that, I think it's going to be a pass.
Yeah, and Suma, you're broad agreement that if it did get to 3, you'd be on the Browns, but otherwise you're going to pass in this game.
Yes, I've been very high on the Steelers in recent weeks because they were consistently a little bit undervalued, in my opinion. But they also have not played like a very good, or at least a somewhat competent passing offense in weeks now. So let's go through this. They got hammered by the Bengals offense. Then they won against the Colts, against the Falcons with Marcus Mariota, Ravens. I think it was the Tyler Huntley / Anthony Brown game where Huntley got a concussion. Panthers with Sam Darnold, Raiders with Derek Carr in the cold, and Ravens last week with Tyler Huntley. So that's basically 6 straight passing offense that most defenses are not afraid of. And I think that Deshaun Watson and the Browns, with the way he is getting better in recent weeks, will present a much tougher challenge. I also think that I'm getting the vibes from the Browns press conferences that they are going to take this game 100% serious and want to leave the season on a positive note and want to spoil the Steelers playoff hopes, and also spoiling Mike Tomlin getting a positive record, I guess, for a 17th straight year. So yeah, if it gets back to 3, I will be interested in the Browns. At 2.5, not so much.
Solid. I think a lot of those, all of us certainly in the matchbook betting community, but also in the just in general, the sharp betting community, have enjoyed this run for the Pittsburgh Steelers of late.
We get an ISO view.
Yeah,
on
we get
Zuma
ISO Zuma, and I'm talking. So I think Dan's internet may be having a moment, but I'll just talk through it because this is going to be excellent podcasting. If you go from week 10 on, week 10 is, of course, when the Steelers came out of their bye. And then you look at EPA per play on the team tier chart. Ben Baldwin's amazing running backs don't matter chart is a great resource for that. And you just take week 10 on. That's a non-trivial sample size of games. You know who the EPA per play metrics look like when you compare the Steelers to other teams in the NFL? It looks like the Eagles, the Bills, and the Bengals. 3 teams that we very much think of as in the mix for a Super Bowl championship this season. Now, is that warranted? No, a lot of it, as Suma broke down, I think fairly eloquently, is because they've played some pretty poor teams in that stretch, some pretty poor quarterbacks especially. But it has been fun to ride the Steelers train and make money on them week in, week out, as they've been undervalued by market. I am calling for a sincere sell sign right now on the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, they may ultimately give you one more game effort, get themselves above 500, like apparently matters more than anything else to to Mike Tomlin, but and they may get to the playoffs. They may be your 7th seed. That's entirely possible. However, this is not a good matchup for them. All of the things that were kind of ancillary reasons to believe in the Steelers the last handful of weeks do not exist in this game. I think you're going up against a team that has a very, very live pass rush, with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney healthy now. I think you're going up against a team that has chemistry all of a sudden between Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. The one thing that the Steelers cannot do well defensively is cover, specifically good route running, guys down the field, like in the exact mold of Amari Cooper. So Cooper having a big day looks realistic to me. The defensive line for the Browns having a big day looks realistic to me. And while in general, you want to attack the Browns on the ground, you got a heroic performance last week out of the offensive line for the Steelers, and Najee Harris in particular, coming back off of that physical of a contest and repeating it against the Browns is a tough ask for me. In general, if you follow the Steelers over the long arc here, the weeks after they happen to have these sort of massive physical car crash type of games against the Ravens, it's very tough for them to get back up and do it again. And that's exactly what you're asking them to do this week against a Browns team that looks to play spoiler. In general, the motivational side of things for the final week of the season, I put the teams that are eliminated into 2 categories for this sort of thing. Teams that were eliminated last week tend not to show up. Teams that have been eliminated for a while that can play spoiler do. And I think that is the category the Browns fall into this week. I won't be sad to see the Steelers win this game and, maybe even get to the 7th seed. That'd be a cool story. Kenny Pickett has exceeded my expectations this season substantially. I did not think that this was going to be a very good team, or we would be here talking about them in this context. But that said, I think the Browns play spoiler this week, and I think the run ends here for Kenny Pickett and company. It's just a bad spot. Realistically, I think almost any other team that they've played this season, I think they would rather be playing right now than the Cleveland Browns in their current form. Browns 2 weeks in a row get to eliminate a team from the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I like that. I think we're going to lock that in 2.2 currently on the money line. There's no messing with Drew. It's money line or money. So,
well, the 3s are gone. If 3 shows back up, which maybe, who the heck knows? Steelers have been such a cash cow for a lot of market making players that, maybe somebody walks to the window and puts a big bet on them and gives you a shot at a 3. But in the absence of a 3, I think the money line is a fine play.
Very narrative and trendy there as well with the if a team is eliminated from the playoffs 1 week compared to the other one. It's almost like you were Rob talking there, Drew.
Well, you got to, the motivation is everything this week. Yeah. And there are 2 ways to get after it. One is you just basically put them in a category. The other is you read and listen to every quote and you try to just glean from the coaching staff. How are they treating this game? Like Rob mentioned, Browns are giving you every indication that this is not a we're just going to take care of business and 3-2-1 Cancun. Like this is Steelers. We can put our finger in their eye and we're going to do it. So let's go Browns.
I think we lost Dan again, so let's get into it. We have Patriots and Bills up on screen right now.
Yes.
Okay, so you seem very excited, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, we had this game, I think, 3 weeks ago. It was a Thursday night football game where they already played and the Bills won very comfortably. I think it was something like 24-7 in that range. I can't remember anymore, but we have now consistently seen a common theme when these 2 teams play, and it's that Josh Allen and this offense is the kryptonite of Bill Belichick. For whatever reason, like Belichick can have all the ingredients on defense, like decent, very good pass rush this year, some cornerbacks who can play man coverage, but for whatever reason, it does not work against this Bills offense. And also the Pats struggle with defending running quarterbacks. So that's always a very deadly combo when they play against the Bills because their man coverage isn't working well against Stephon Diggs and company for whatever reason. Maybe because he's very good and they have much more success against other teams. Secondly, their zone coverage is not working well against the Bills. And when the Bills mix in Josh Allen once, it's basically over. So I just don't see a lot of scenarios in which the Patriots suddenly can come up with a really special game plan that can hold the Bills offense to like 20 points or something. I just cannot see it. And on the other side, the Patriots offense is still so bad. There's no improvement in terms of play calling. It's all either a screen or a vertical shot down the sideline, which Mac Jones cannot complete to save his life. And the Bills defense is very, very good. They can handle the line of scrimmage. They got Tre'Davious White in a much larger role now. Jordan Poyer is playing very well for them despite his injury. So I just don't see a scenario in which the Pats defense is defending the Bills very well, and the Patriots can consistently move the ball on offense. So with this spread still being in the -7, soft -6.5, more like a -7 range, I'm leaning towards the Bills here because I just think that they're going to score. Yes, we're gonna talk about the potential downgrade for the Bills when it comes to preparation for this game, but in my opinion, this is already priced in because this line, if it's a normal week without that crazy situation about Damar Hamlin, this line should be north of 7, in my opinion.
Yeah, Rob, you're in agreement there. You're liking the Bills.
I am, for all the reasons that Suma mentioned. I mean, with the exception of the wind game last year, which isn't like the true football conditions, we've really just seen the Patriots unable to stop this Bills offense for the most part. And expecting Mac Jones, I mean, I know the motivational angle for New England winning in, but it doesn't really matter to me when you are that limited on offense, whether that's the play calling, Jones in particular. We look back to that week 13 reading between these two teams. The Bills were already without Von Miller, and they were still able to get home on Mac Jones in that contest, put a lot of pressure on him overall. The one thing we've seen about the Patriots this season, they kind of step up in class and they've crumbled. I mean, whether that was Baltimore earlier this year, the Bills on the Thursday nighter, most recently, I guess, they did put in a good effort against the Cincinnati Bengals in that second half, but that was on its way to being a rout before the Patriots turned that game around. I think this number's short. Now you have to account for like the fact that we're just flying blind on the Bills' state of mind as a team. We still have no idea if they know what they're playing for. There's all these talks about adding another team to the playoffs, potentially having the number 1 seed choose whether they're going to have the bye or home field advantage. All this stuff plays a factor in terms of the motivation for the Bills in this game as well. But if we do get a situation where Buffalo has something to play for here, I think that -7 is pretty short.
Yeah, Drew, and you're in agreement.
Yeah, Bills. I laid it. This is a good spot. I want to be part of the energy and this game going on in Buffalo, and the energy that they're going to feed off that crowd is going to be unbelievable. This is one of one in terms of a motivational spot for a team. All of the anecdotes that have come out, and just in general the positive trending and the health of Damar is going to elevate these guys. This is now, I've gone back and forth and back now in terms of how this matters to the Bills. I don't know over the balance of a playoff run one way or the other if it becomes a distraction, but for this week, considering it's a home game, considering the proximity to the event, and the fact that you're going to have that crowd elevating you, I feel like Bills by 100 here. I mean, this is going to be this is even beyond just this being an amazingly positive matchup for Josh Allen and company against a Patriots team that can't defend his particular skill set, and Mac Jones and company who haven't beaten anyone of quality all season. This is one way action in a neutral game state, and then you add the motivational cherry on top. I think the Bills are going to be absolute runaway in this one.
Yeah, we'll lock in Bills -7, 2.0 currently on Matchbook as an official bet. And that all the other bets will be recapped on insights.matchbook.com post-recording. Jets at the Dolphins, and we'll take a look at the betting as we currently have it on matchbook.com. This is shaping up to be a very, very big game. Jets 1.93 favorites, Dolphins 2.0. That gives Jets -1.0 on the handicap line, and 38.5 is the total. Suma, you were leaning towards the Jets, but the number's moving.
Yes, the number moved off the Teddy Bridgewater news, who has a dislocated pinky. And the way that they framed this, it sounded like Teddy will not play this week, or maybe will just be an emergency option for them. Even though Teddy, for the limited time that he has played this season, he has been significantly worse than Tua Tagovailoa. But I think that Skylar Thompson is still worse than Teddy, and I think a significant downgrade. And they will go against a Jets team that, in my opinion, yes, they are eliminated from the playoffs, but I think Robert Saleh and this team, they want to go into Miami and give their best, spoil the Dolphins, leave the season, which was a roller coaster, on a positive note. Mike White is playing for the next contract. Basically, he's becoming an unrestricted free agent. Robert Saleh, I also think, has some incentive to end the season on a positive note. And the Jets are basically playing for like 1 or 2 draft spots or whatever. So I think they will bring their A game. And Skylar Thompson, behind this offensive line, we don't know whether Teron Armstead is going to play. I just don't see how the Dolphins can control the line of scrimmage. I think this is a terrible mismatch in the trenches. In the first game, they were kind of able to run the ball on the Jets. I don't think this will happen again this week. And then it's Thompson who really struggled to put the ball accurately down the field against this Jets defense. And even in the first game, I gotta pull out the stats, but I think that either Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle had a very bad game against Sauce Gardner. So I just think that the Dolphins will be shorthanded on offense against this Jets defense. And then on the other side, I think Mike White and the Jets offense can make this a very close game with their weapons against a Dolphins secondary that is not very good. Xavier Howard is not having that kind of all-pro season that he used to have with like 10 or so interceptions. There are some holes to throw into, and yeah, I think this is going to be a very competitive game. It's very, very close to a coin flip. Jets should be small faves, but with this game being at -1.5 in some places, I would not be so heavily on the Jets. But if you get a great money line like a 1.93 like at Matchbook, it's definitely worth playing, in my opinion.
Okay, and taking what Suma said aside, Drew, sometimes you look at a matchup and a game and it just screams under, and that's what you're looking at here. 38.5 is the total.
Yeah, I make this 37. The Jets offense is broken. Mike White not going to save the day here. Mike White was pretty uninspiring last week, and a lot of that is because the offensive line can't really block when they're up against a meaningful pass rush. They are in deep trouble. That is kind of, I think, what the Miami Dolphins are going to try to lean on in this game is their pass rush. The D line for the Dolphins has just a delight of a matchup here. I think that Skylar Thompson and company are not going to be asked to do much. Mike McDaniel, I would expect to roll out a pretty heavy run game attack here, try to get an ugly win. Yeah, I mean, Dolphins and Jets both, I like this game for both defenses, really. The Jets defense is legit. I make them a top 10 unit, clearly, particularly their pass defense. The matchup against, between Sauce Gardner and Tyreek Hill is awesome. I would expect that they play to a draw here. And I think that in general, Dolphins probably ought to be favored. I hope that a lot of our friends who bet Jets at absurd plus prices on the opener get their cover. They deserve it. This should probably be Dolphins win by 3. But at this point, I could only play the Dolphins, and I think there's still a little meat on the bone for the under.
Okay, and then Rob, I know you're completely neutral on this game, so I'll give you a tough question. Jets or the under, the two cases that Suma and Drew outlined. If you had to be with one and you had a free $10 free bet, what would you go with?
So Suma, this is a tough one. I'm so neutral. I'm so neutral on this game. I mean, the Dolphins fall into this week 18, last week of the season category of needing to win to keep their season alive. And I'm not exaggerating about historically those being terrible bets. Like we're talking sub 40% type of situation. I'm more inclined to bet the under in this game purely because of I had watched Jets Seahawks in full. Mike White does not look right in the sense that he just was very unwilling to even take a hit in that game, was getting the ball out very quickly. The Jets offense looked extremely limited to me. Skylar Thompson has come nowhere close to showing the form that he did in the preseason earlier this year as well. So if anything, I will say the under in this game.
Cool. We'll lock in under 38.5, 1.96. I actually wrote it in earlier once I saw that Drew was on board because it did scream under. Some games just do scream under. Sometimes it's that simple. We're going to get to any other bets. If you don't have a match,
it's going to be beautiful weather, by the way, down in Miami. It's going to be like 80 degrees and sunny. Unbelievable. Under.
I was just going to say we're going with the under.
Weather.
That's final.
Yeah, under weather.
If anyone in the UK and Ireland, if you don't have a Matchbook account, you do want to set one up, enter the bonus code Matchbook NFL. Full details are on insights.matchbook.com. You get a free £10 free bet every week once you deposit and place your first bet of £30. Rob, Rams at the Seahawks. So you mentioned you're going to be keeping an eye on other games, particularly the Lions and the Packers during this one, but you like the Rams.
This is the one game where the team needs to win, where I think that the number is pretty significantly inflated.
Okay.
I don't think highly of the Seahawks, and in particular in this matchup, if we look at the Seahawks defense all year, they are very poor in defending running backs in the passing game and tight ends in the passing game, which is pretty much exactly where Baker Mayfield consistently throws the ball. I mean, if you look at that Christmas Day game against the Denver Broncos, that's how he attacked the Broncos defense, getting the ball out quick. On top of that, they now have rejuvenated running game because Cam Akers, I don't know where this came from, but all of a sudden he looks totally fine again. Losing Jordan Brooks is a big deal for the Seahawks defense. He's a very good run stopper altogether, especially on 3rd and 4th down where he's been pretty pivotal for that defense this year. So I think this number is too much. I honestly made this closer to 4 than I have at 6. I think that this is a pretty valuable bet on the Rams here, capitalizing on the Seahawks needing to win factor.
Okay. And Suma, you like a teaser, Bengals Bills?
Yes, it's not technically a advantage teaser right now because both teams are in the -7 range. But first of all, I like both matchups. I like the matchup for both teams a lot. And I think with Lamar Jackson not playing this week and Tyler Huntley being severely limited, he did not throw at the open portion of practice today. I think there's a scenario in which, I don't know, Huntley might be limited or he might not end up playing. And I can rather see the line moving towards -7.5 than I can see it moving towards 6.5. So there is still an opportunity to get some nice CLV on the teaser leg. And Bills Patriots, I don't think that there's going to be any form of scheduling change, especially with the positive news on Damar Hamlin today. And same story. I think that if this was a quote-unquote normal week, I think this line would be a little bit higher. And I think Bills against Patriots also a decent teaser leg.
Okay, Drew, we'll head over to you. Any other bets and then onto your best bet, which we've mentioned earlier. Cowboys -7 at the Commanders, 1.94.
Gosh, yeah, could do so much with this. Could talk about how the Colts don't deserve to be favored over any NFL franchise, regardless of how important it is for the Texans to lose. That game is hysterical. Could talk about my favorite teaser of the week, which is very, very clearly Browns and Vikings. The idea of teasing the Vikings and getting to bet against Nathan Peterman at like 1.5 is pretty appealing there. So Browns Vikings favorite teaser of the week. My favorite other bet though is Cowboys -7 at the Commanders. Commanders still figuring out what they're going to do, who they're going to play at quarterback. It is going to be Sam Howell getting some reps. If there was ever a time that the Cowboys defense could have asked for, hey, we need to get right. We have a game that we still kind of need to play for because who the heck knows what's going to happen in Giants-Eagles game. We are still live to win the NFC East. Let's go out and just absolutely mollywop our rival, Washington Commanders, who are figuring out what they're doing at the quarterback position. This looks like a very lopsided contest. I don't know why we're not seeing the same sort of market we did last week where it was Cowboys versus the Titans. Titans were it's the same state as state of affairs as the Commanders here. Commanders going to be missing a lot of important pieces. By the way, if you haven't been following their injury report, there is quite a few meaningful pieces on that defense who are not practicing. Meanwhile, Cowboys coming in relatively healthy. I think this number should be closer to double digits. I will lay a 7 with the Cowboys.
Okay, Drew, and stick with you for your best bet, which we mentioned earlier. It's the Browns. You've touched on it loads. So very briefly, Browns money line at Steelers, 2.2.
Yeah, can't add much more other than this is just a bad spot for the Steelers coming off of that game against the Ravens, and then Browns, finding some form offensively. Deshaun Watson looking to build on what has been a very uneven campaign so far in his return. He's got a nice matchup here with a relatively looks to be a healthy offensive line for the Browns, neutralizing the one strength of the Steelers defense, and then the Browns can just light it up in the passing game here as Deshaun Watson kind of sets the stage for an interesting handicap for the 2023 campaign and beyond.
Okay. Yeah. Suma, you're copying Rob here. Although Rob was second, I must admit. But I've given you 6.5 because that's what you asked for, 1.87. Just interesting enough, Rob's +6, 1.94. So take your pick for anyone listening.
Yes, Rams, I think this is going to be a much closer game because the Rams match up very well with the Seahawks, and over the past 4 weeks, this Rams offense, not Rams offense, actually ranks, I think, borderline top 10 in offensive pass DVOA. Their one game looks a lot more explosive, with Cam Akers finally being close to 100% after his Achilles tear last season. The Seahawks defense, I still have them very low. I think that the Rams can and will move the ball on the ground and use play action passes to running backs, to tight ends. And I think that way they will be able to keep this one close at Seattle. And I really would not be surprised if there could be an opportunity for the Lions to still play for that wildcard ticket in the Sunday Night Football slot.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll lock that in. Both Rob and Suma are in agreement. It's Suma's best bet. Rob, finally to you, best bet. Chiefs at Raiders, and after their win last week, Raiders at 9.0 pills.
It does. A little bit of uncertainty in who Jarrett Stidham actually is, and we do tend to see a downgrade in the second start, as more tape becomes available. However, this is quite an adjustment still, in my opinion, on Las Vegas. I mean, this team plays pretty consistent close games for the entirety of the year. They just haven't been winning a lot of them. But aside from the flu game, basically, where they lost 24-0 to the Saints, they've been exclusively in one-score games, have not lost by margin. And then you have a Kansas City team who, if you look at their distribution, they win a lot of games, but they really struggle to win by a lot of points in those games. I mean, Las Vegas went into Kansas City earlier this year, and they were a 7-point underdog on the road in that game. And now they're getting 9 at home. And obviously motivation changes. There's injuries, no Chandler Jones anymore, no Denzel Perryman, obviously the downgrade at quarterback. But I can't help but think that this has been too much of an adjustment. I don't think there's a lot of scenarios here where KC just walks in on the road, wins by a huge number. And I liked what I saw out of Stidham quite a bit last week. So I'll ride the Raiders here. I'll take the +9.
Yeah, so did I. So much so I actually gave them the win. They, of course, covered but did not beat the 49ers last week. But like you said, second week syndrome perhaps might strike. That's it. We're done. We're done for the regular season and week 18. With one bye week, the guys did 17 weeks. My thanks to Rob. My thanks to Drew. My thanks to Suma. Quick final thoughts, guys. We've got about a minute. Rob, looking forward to the final week ahead of the playoffs?
I'm looking forward to any week of football that we get.
Yes.
That's the reality of the situation. Give me a week of the NFL, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Suma?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I cannot wait for the wildcard round because we could have some absolute banger matchups like Bucks hosting the Cowboys is going to be great. Jags hosting Chargers would be a phenomenal matchup. So I think wildcard weekend is really going to be absolutely lit this year.
Drew, I have two futures, one on your recommendation with the Bucks and the other is my beloved Chargers, which I do every year. They're both still in the running somehow.
Hey, everybody is. That the market is not wrong about who the favorites ought to be.
No.
But I think both are absolutely wide open this year, and we could have, last year we had 2 4 seeds in the Super Bowl. Why not a 4 and a 5 for Dan?
I mean, these talks of it potentially expanding to 8 teams for the playoffs, which would give us an extra game and potentially allow the Jets to get eliminated from the playoffs in back-to-back weeks, that's just my dream scenario right there.
There's no need for that soon. We'll leave it there. The playoff talk's going to be pretty exciting. We'll be back next week and all throughout the playoffs into the Super Bowl in February. But for now, take care. Enjoy the weekend's football. Enjoy the betting. And we'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.